Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I shall perform for you.
He will forever be known as Grandpa, the cantankerous yet lovable patriarch of the Munster family.
Al, out of makeup, children, adults, like, oh, there's Grandpa. Oh, hi, Grandpa. I mean, he was just always Grandpa.
It don't matter. You can call me Al, Grandpa.
But his unique career has spanned more than 40 years with boisterous performances on stage, screen, and television.
He's an absolute actor. He's just a very funny man.
Ooh, my pussycat home.
For Al Lewis, the journey from the tough streets of Brooklyn to the bright lights of Hollywood to the campaign trail for political office has been one of moxie and mystery.
My father has created a huge myth about himself. My father is, in very many ways, a very large enigma.
I know, you're skeptical.
He truly is a master raconteur. He can talk to you, and you will bend over to make sure you catch every word.
Forget it, Herman. They're not listening. Let's go!
He is a whirlwind. He's a carnival. He's a mean streak. He's a typhoon. This guy is just so real, he's unreal.
As America entered the 20th century, thousands of immigrants poured through the gates of New York's Ellis Island in search of freedom and prosperity. In 1913, a 16-year-old Russian, Ida Nidal, landed in Manhattan's oppressive garment district, where women squeezed into overcrowded warehouses to sew dresses that earned them only pennies per piece.
She worked in a sweatshop. The women were working with their heads down. There were Italian and Jewish women in those days, and she worked bent over. The sweat was coming down. She got 5 cents every dress that she finished. She was called a finisher.
When Ida met Alexander Meister, a Russian-born sign painter, the two fell in love and married in 1922. The following year, on April 30th, 1923, a son, Albert, was born, and the family settled into Brownsville, a bustling Jewish ghetto in Brooklyn. Over the next few years, Albert's family grew with the addition of 2 brothers, Philip and Henry. But in 1929, the 6-year-old's world was shattered when his father died in a fall from a painter's scaffold. Grieving over their loss and plunged even further into poverty by the Great Depression, the Meisters struggled just to keep food on the table.
We had one uncle, and he was fortunate enough to get a job as a baker. I want to tell you, if anybody questions how good day-old bread can be, he would come home, bring that day-old bread home, and 3 families would all share on that day-old bread. That's how things went. That's how hard things were.
But Ida was determined that her sons set their sights beyond Brownsville. When chronic ear infections forced Albert to stay home from school, she urged him to keep up with his studies. The curious youngster began to read obsessively, devouring the daily newspapers and frequenting the local library.
My mother taught us, you get the most out of yourself. You go higher. The old Yiddish-German expression, Hecha, higher. If you accomplished a little, you could accomplish more.
As he overcame his sickliness, Al hit a growth spurt and soon took over as man of the house.
He was a kid of the neighborhood who basically at 12 walked and talked like a man of 35. He was very solemn. He was studious.
Al was what we called the Alte, and that's an expression. It is a Yiddish-German expression meaning the old one. We always viewed him as the old one.
The bookish adolescent adopted a brash demeanor, smoking cheap cigars and wearing adult suits. Able to pass himself off as a young man, Al worked odd jobs to help pay the monthly rent of $26.
He was charismatic as a young person. Al went out and he broke his rear, and whatever he would earn, he would come in and it would be right on that table.
But the teenager's sense of responsibility extended beyond his immediate family. Several years earlier, his mother had joined the Garment Workers Union in their struggle for better working conditions. Inspired by her example, Al too became an activist, fighting back when his neighbors were evicted from their homes.
The city marshals, they would throw people out of their apartments when people, of course, couldn't pay their rent. Al would go back to the apartments with his friends and crowbar open the doors and move people back in, literally pick their furniture up off the street and put them back in.
More stimulated by the streets than the classroom, the self-taught 16-year-old left high school in his junior year. He sought work wherever he could find it, even as a roustabout under the big top.
He would disappear for months on end. He went, so to speak, where his calling was or where work was. He would just go off. Later on, I found out he had gone to work in a circus.
Over the next few years, Al took a job as a carnival barker, peddled elixir with a traveling medicine show, and hawked peanuts at Brooklyn's Ebbets Field. By 1942, America had entered the Second World War, and patriotic young men rushed to enlist. Al did his part by signing up with the Merchant Marines. When peace was declared, the 22-year-old returned from his travels and recounted thrilling tales of his ship being torpedoed and nearly drowning at sea. With no clear plans for the future, he took a job at a resort hotel in upstate New York.
He was a waiter in the Catskill Mountains in New York, and as a tradition, the service staff would put on a play at the end of the summer. Everybody liked it, they applauded, and these are almost his exact words. Once I got that round of applause, I said, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Having discovered that his larger-than-life persona made him a natural actor, Al returned to New York, excited to try his hand on the stage. The 26-year-old enrolled in Paul Mann's acting studio and adopted a new name, Al Lewis.
He took the name Lewis from a Broadway actor. At that time, everyone was trying to hide from their ethnicity. Meister was a little too ethnic.
To pay for the classes he shared with up-and-coming stars like Vic Morrow and Sidney Poitier, the young man took on a variety of jobs, from store detective to plumber's assistant to working with disabled children. But Lewis's enthusiasm for acting was overshadowed by the news that his indomitable mother, Ida, was stricken with cancer. He was devastated when she died in 1950 and became more determined than ever to live up to her high ideals. After several years honing his craft in acting school, Al Lewis pushed his way into the office of director Jose Quintero at New York's premier off-Broadway theater, The Circle in the Square.
Jose Quintero's a giant in the theater. He willed himself, my dad, into that role, but chutzpah, moxie, whatever you want to call it, forced him into saying to this giant, I'm as good as anyone. I belong here.
Lewis walked out of the theater with the role of Pat McGloin in Eugene O'Neill's The Iceman Cometh, starring Jason Robards Jr. The barroom drama opened in 1956 to outstanding reviews. Al's success stunned everyone, including a childhood friend, Marge Domowitz, who was delighted to discover her former neighbor in New York's hottest show.
She had just come back from 2.5 to 3 year stint working for the United Nations overseas. She was wise beyond her years. She was at 21, effectively a world traveler, which is tremendous.
Certain that Marge was the woman for him, Lewis demanded her hand in marriage. On their 19th date, Marge agreed, and the two were wed on November 1st. When their son David was born 2 years later, the family settled into an apartment filled with books and literally crawling with pet reptiles, Al's latest hobby. And as his family grew, so did his career. The actor began landing guest spots on such television programs as the United States Steel Hour, The Phil Silvers Show, and Route 66.
I don't care what you say. That kid ain't no psycho. He had more brains, more chutzpah, more moxie than any guy who ever bellied up to this plank. And that's saying something, mister. Now look, it's past closing
Now
time.
try to get this through that thick skull of yours, will you? He's in danger.
And you're a cop.
All right, let's try it again. Where is he?
I told you, he took off.
Where?
I told you, with Red.
And you don't know where she lives?
That's what I said.
You're a liar.
And you're a cop.
Al's success in television, however, didn't stand in the way of his stage career. After appearing in several short-run Broadway productions, Lewis hit pay dirt in 1961 with the smash musical Do-Re-Mi, in which he played a gangster opposite Phil Silvers and Nancy Walker. By now, the bold kid from Brownsville had carved a niche for himself as a sought-after character actor. But it would take two unlikely roles on the small screen to make Al Lewis a household name. In 1961, while Al Lewis was appearing in Do-Re-Mi on Broadway, the theater-trained tough guy made a guest appearance on the hit series Car 54, Where Are You? The comedy, conceived by producer Nat Hiken, starred Fred Gwynne and Joey Ross as a pair of bumbling Bronx police officers. Al's small role as a construction foreman garnered attention from critics and viewers alike.
I mean, the people wrote thousands of letters. They loved him. And next thing I know, I mean, he was so popular that he became a regular on the show.
Recognizing his previously untapped flair for comedy, the producer created the character of Officer Leo Schnauzer, especially for Lewis.
Hey, Nichols.
What?
What are you, a wise guy or something? You know what I mean. You put me on pretty good, huh?
What are you talking about?
You know what I'm talking about. Today is Thursday, huh?
Today is Thursday.
Today is Friday.
But I tell you, it's Thursday.
Why don't you look at a calendar once in a while?
I did. That's why I know it's
Why don't you learn how to
Thursday.
read the
I
calendar?
know it's Thursday.
A wise guy, huh?
I'm the wise
Put
guy.
me
It's
on.
Thursday.
Hey, what's going on around here?
Schnauzer was so popular that before long, Hiken beefed up the role and gave the boisterous cop an equally rambunctious wife, played by Charlotte Rae.
The character that Al Lewis played as Leo Schnauzer, he was very broad strokes. He was almost bigger than life, but yet real. He was a little wild, which made it wonderful.
Are you happy? Are you happy? You disgraced us again in front of all the neighbors.
I disgraced. If you hadn't started with that big mouth of yours.
Leo.
Look what I'm calling a mouth. That's a burglar alarm with teeth.
You see, with his yelling and his screaming, and all I've been trying to do is say 2 words to him all night. Drop dead!
Show me how, please.
Quiet, the both of you.
We had to be the battling Schnauzers. You know, really rough stuff. We had become very intimately hostile, but not in real life.
Off-screen, the streetwise Brooklyn-born actor bonded with his tall, Harvard-trained co-star, Fred Gwynne. Though they came from wildly different backgrounds, the two soon became fast friends. When in 1963, NBC abruptly canceled Car 54, Lewis found himself looking for a job. Al quickly landed a small part in his first motion picture, George Roy Hill's The World of Henry Orient, starring Peter Sellers. But one role wasn't enough to pay the bills, especially since his family had grown to include a second son, Ted, born in 1964. When an offer came to star in a TV comedy called The Munsters, the actor quickly flew to Hollywood and appeared in this rarely seen test. In it, Lewis played Grandpa, the vampire patriarch of a ghoulish household, opposite Car 54 co-star Fred Gwynne as his son-in-law, Herman Munster, Joan Marshall as Herman's vampire wife, Happy Dermott as the wolf boy Eddie, and Beverly Owen as the family's all-American cousin. Unsatisfied with the outcome, Universal reshot the pilot in more traditional black and white, with new cast members Yvonne DiCarlo and Butch Patrick.
Ants, baldness, communists, crabgrass. Crabgrass potion. Oh, that stuff makes a wonderful crabgrass.
On September 24th, 1964, The Munsters premiered on CBS. The same month also saw the debut of such escapist fare as Bewitched and rival monster program, The Addams Family.
I like to call it like an escapism, and these kind of shows that had no basis in real reality were very popular because they were, you know, they were simple, they were warm, they were non-threatening, there was no real violence.
The Munsters was an immediate hit and remained unaffected by the mid-season recasting of Marilyn with actress Pat Priest. Audiences loved Grandpa, who attempted to solve his family's problems with concoctions, potions, and spells. Unfortunately, the cantankerous sorcerer often forgot the proper recipe.
He was sweet, he was kind of bumbling. You might have felt sorry for him because he was always kind of not getting things right and he was flubbing up.
I'm gonna turn on the machine full blast.
But it was Al's acerbic Brooklyn edge that gave the 378-year-old vampire his bite.
Now, Lily, it's not as bad as Grandpa's making out.
Not as bad as Grandpa's making it out. It couldn't be worse. You ruined Eddie's car. You ruined the birthday. Look, I don't want to discuss it. As a matter of fact, I'm not even going to talk about it. Herman, get out of this house. Leave this house at once.
He pretty much is, he is Grandpa. You know, when we were rehearsed and read on Monday and Tuesday, and when he was in makeup Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, there was no difference. And that's why that character was so good, because he was playing himself.
The series also benefited from the chemistry Lewis shared with his co-star, Fred Gwynne.
I consider some of the moments that they've done in some of the episodes as being some of the most classic TV scenes ever done. You know, they just had a real rapport and they worked well with each other, and they really were up there, you know, as far as comedic teams with, you know, Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello, you know, you name them.
Sorry, but the paper was on my side of the line.
It wasn't. It happened to be lying right in the middle of the white line.
Did you say right in the middle of the line?
It's exactly what I said, right in the middle of the white line.
The two spent hours together, developing sketches and suggesting creative ideas to the producers, like adding a family pet, a dragon named Spot.
Oh, hi, Spot. Well done, please.
Both Fred and Al had a tremendous input. They would add lines, they would, between the two of them, would work up, you know, a way to do something, or why don't we try this?
When they were showing me around Universal in their costume, I could see that they were deeply loyal, really genuine buddies. It was a lovely thing to see.
Fred became one of his closest, dearest lifelong friends. The families were close. It was early enough in their careers that I don't think any egos were involved, and they learned with each other.
By the age of 42, the actor had succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. In Grandpa Munster, he had found a role perfectly suited to his larger-than-life personality. But how long would audiences remain under the spell of TV's mischievous mad scientist? Al Lewis was about to find out. By the fall of 1965, Al Lewis's face was one of the most recognizable in America. Grandpa Munster was plastered on hundreds of items, ranging from paint sets to lunch boxes to hand puppets.
How popular was the Munsters? Munster cars, Munster coaches, models, Somebody even tried to come up with a Munster coach-style bicycle.
With the popularity of the show surging, Al soon found his off-screen hours filled with promotional appearances.
There's Al Lewis of the Munsters and Lou Lee. Somebody told me you live in a zoo. Now, you have a hobby. Now, what is it?
Like reptiles and amphibians. Snakes, turtles, tortoises.
Do you mind if we have our picture taken?
The actor's success allowed him to move his family to suburban Sherman Oaks, California, and within months, the Lewises welcomed a third son, Paul. Living so close to the studio, Al frequently enjoyed bringing his older boys to work with him.
My dad, he would take me to the set and I would be King David. I get to sit in a big, tall chair and people bring me stuff all day long. Now, I would recommend every child in America should have that experience. Be king for a day. I loved it.
Lewis hit his stride as the hit series continued into its second season and cheerfully endured 14-hour days, which started with 2 hours in the makeup chair. But he became frustrated as the show's writers began recycling old routines and worn-out gags.
The show for a while ran on its just the uniqueness and the novelty act that it was. After a while, there's only so many times you can go to the well of these type of jokes that we'd already done twice.
In the spring of 1966, CBS decided to cancel the Munsters after only 2 seasons. But before Al was able to hang up his cape, Grandpa was called upon for one more performance. Universal decided to put the creepy family on the big screen in a Technicolor motion picture entitled Munster Go Home.
Herman Munster inherits a fortune and a castle full of homicidal relatives.
This is the secret of Munster Hall. Call the police. Right. Get the FBI. Will do. Call Scotland Yard. Right now. Phone Batman. I got it. Car 54, where are you? It's frightfully funny.
Despite its extensive promotion, Munster Go Home was a disappointment at the box office, leaving the 43-year-old actor out of work and with almost no income. That summer, Al's life took another turn for the worse when he received a frightening phone call from Florida, where his wife and children were vacationing.
My mom, my Aunt Marion, her 3 sons, and my mom's 3 sons are driving on a highway. Head-on collision. Everyone's injured. My mom and I the worst.
My dad came immediately to Miami and was with us 24/7. 24/7.
The life that was changed was my mom's and my father's as well. It was an accident for him, too. My mom was this stunning kind of picture book, beautiful, deep, kind of beauty, and then is involved in this really horrendous, disfiguring car accident. Her body, her face was smashed, her limbs were broken, she lost an eye, and my father and her, they had to make some sort of life change. And they did, in their personal relationship with one another, in their ability to support each other and care for each other and endure each other.
Al spent months by Marge's side, nursing her back to health, until mounting bills forced him back to work. But the actor quickly discovered that his 2-year stint as Grandpa Munster had left him hopelessly typecast. When he landed his next job in 1967 as a guest on the hit series Lost in Space, Lewis found himself playing a character who was all too familiar.
Master, we have visitors.
Visitors? Ha! No wonder I failed. You're to blame. You frightened my spirit away. I shall turn you all into frogs.
Frogs? Oh, you wouldn't do that.
But I would. I like frogs. Earthlings. Go away. Give me froggy, woggy, doodle beef.
Well, he goofed it again.
That's not what I ordered.
By 1968, the war in Vietnam and the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy had thrown the country into turmoil. A political activist since his youth, Lewis became caught up in the movement for peace and equality and turned his home into a gathering place for left-wing leaders.
We had meetings in our house. People would come by, Stokely Carmichael, Dick Gregory, Ron Kovacs, As far as my dad in politics went, he was to the left.
I remember being on a march, Griffith Park, Black Panther rally, some police involvement, and lest we say having to get out of there rather quickly. A little bit of running.
He was always very sensitive to the black issue. He felt it was wrong. He was always a political person. He was always an underdog rooter. And I say it goes back possibly to my mother.
Al's concern for the disadvantaged was not restricted to the political arena. His tremendous enthusiasm for basketball gave him the opportunity to lend a hand to underprivileged high school students. Lewis's keen eye for basketball talent earned him a reputation as one of the sport's best scouts, and over the years, his expertise was highlighted in the pages of Sports Illustrated.
He loved the game. More importantly, he loved the kids that played the game. So he felt that if he could tell a coach about a kid who is deserving of a scholarship, and otherwise he gets no education, he did it.
People are the ultimate spectacle.
And now you're going to see it, yowza, the Derby!
In 1969, Al's career received a boost when he landed a small role opposite Jane Fonda in Sidney Pollack's high-profile film, They Shoot Horses, Don't They? He was cast as Gig Young's henchman in the story of a dance marathon set in the 1930s.
My father's role is sort of marginal in terms of screen time, but he manages to really exude a kind of menace that is just a perfect expression of the character that he's playing.
The film was a critical and box office success, but it didn't improve the actor's luck in securing other dramatic parts. Al Lewis was determined that his long career would not be overshadowed by his performance as Grandpa Munster. But vampires never die, and the 46-year-old actor's eerie alter ego threatened to haunt him forever. By 1970, 47-year-old Al Lewis was out of work and unsure whether to embrace or reject his most famous creation, that of Grandpa Munster.
After the Munsters was, career-wise, pretty tough for my pop. He stopped resisting being Grandpa Munster, only because he was difficult to get other roles. And then that's when he started to take some of the personal appearances.
Reluctantly returning to his Munster's character, Lewis performed for a much smaller audience.
He would do personal appearances. One of my favorite places was Universal Studios. When they first were starting at an attractive theme park, he did that for 2 summers. And that was a lot of fun for me. And I think it was a lot of fun for him.
Throughout the early 1970s, Al accepted bit parts in such films as The Boatniks and They Might Be Giants with George C. Scott. He also spent months on the road appearing in regional theater productions in cities across the U.S. And while distance put a strain on Lewis's marriage, Al remained a devoted father, determined to be a part of his sons' lives.
We traveled a lot when we were young. We would get these gigantic care packages with the oddest, goofiest things, games, toys, T-shirts, from wherever he was. He let us know that we're number one.
When Al was at home, his relationship with Marge deteriorated even further. Anxious over his declining career, he directed his pent-up anger at his wife, and arguments between the two intensified. In 1976, after 20 years together, the Lewises separated.
There was a lot of arguing. There was a lot of fighting. It was tough. It was tough for my mom, and it was very tough for my dad, too. They loved each other, and yet they could not live together after a certain point.
Devastated, Al attempted to reconcile with Marge, but tempers continued to flare. Their divorce became final the following year. At an all-time low and desperate for money, he took work wherever he could find it.
He took a lot of kinds of jobs. After a while, in 74, 5, 6, he was a mortgage broker. Then that collapsed. But he always wanted to be an actor.
In 1979, Lewis's fortunes changed when he was cast in the play California Suite, co-starring Karen Ingenthron.
Al was flown into New York to rehearse the show, and the director asked me, if I knew Al Lewis, and I didn't. I just took him as another actor. It doesn't last very long with that man. For me, it was love at first sight.
During the tour, the relationship between Al and Karen deepened, and the couple became inseparable.
She's one of his biggest fans and biggest supporters. Karen was very, very good for my dad. She allows him to be Al Lewis, the larger-than-life person that he is.
This court is now in session.
In 1980, Al's career gained momentum when he was cast as Hanging Judge Harrison in the feature Used Cars, starring Kurt Russell.
Your Honor, if it please the court, I can produce a number of witnesses who will testify to the fact that she is lying. That she has, in fact, only 25 cars on her lot at this time.
Why don't you see for yourself, Judge?
Order! Order! Miss Fuchs, I'm going to release you on your own recognizance. Court will reconvene at 2:45 p.m. at the New Deal used car lot, where I am going to settle this matter once and for all.
But Lewis was unable to escape the ghosts of his past. The following year, the 58-year-old was asked to reprise his role as Grandpa in the television movie Munster's Revenge.
He did not want to go back and do the Munster Revenge because he didn't like the script. They didn't want to rewrite the script, so they gave him a ton of money, and he did it.
Re-teamed with Fred Gwynne, Lewis was thrilled to discover their chemistry still worked, though the material paled in comparison to the original show.
Grandpa, so which one am I, Estelle or Marie?
What difference does it make? He called for both of us.
How do I look? No. Are my seams straight?
They are. Unfortunately, your legs are crooked.
In 1984, Al and Karen returned to New York, and the couple soon decided to make their union official.
Al gave me a ring and said that he wanted to be married to me, and that was it. We had a civil service in the courtroom.
His arrival in the Big Apple also brought Lewis opportunities that would take his life in a new direction.
I was working in the theater, and he was sort of making the rounds, and he met a man who was interested in creating a restaurant, and it was a match.
As a partner in a restaurant called Grandpa's, the energetic 61-year-old took on the role of maitre d' and spokesperson. Al's old pal, Fred Gwynne, put his artistic talent to use by designing the logo. And on April 28, 1987, the Greenwich Village Eatery opened to the public.
He put in about 3 really hard years developing the place, working 6 days a week out of a 7-day work week.
Al's hard work paid off. Thousands of visitors from all over the world poured through the doors to meet the brash proprietor, known to them all simply as Grandpa.
Grandpa is here.
It's all right. How are you?
With the huge success of the restaurant, Grandpa was once again a marketable commodity. There was Grandpa's Comedy Club, Grandpa's Home-Style Pasta, and Grandpa's Silly Scaries, a line of children's videos. But Lewis wasn't about to give up acting. In 1988, he accepted a small part in the comedy Married to the Mob, starring Michelle Pfeiffer.
We went around the corner to this movie, Married to the Mob. Had no idea that my dad was in it. And suddenly, oh, what? There's my dad. The audience erupts. Grandpa, Grandpa. It was unbelievable. It was just pandemonium.
It seemed as though Lewis was everywhere, and his frequent guest appearances on the Howard Stern radio show helped to keep him in the public eye. But nothing gained the 64-year-old more attention than his on-air appearance at Stern's FCC protest rally.
Because we all have a purpose of being here. And that purpose is to say, F the FCC!
All right, Grandpa, get out of here.
By now, Al's identification with his alter ego, Grandpa Munster, had become a way of life, which unfortunately put a strain on his relationship with Fred Gwynne, who was determined to escape his Munster past. But in 1993, when Gwynne was diagnosed with terminal cancer, the two shared a brief but meaningful reconciliation.
The type of cancer that Fred had, pancreatic cancer, like a bullet, fast, very, very tough. A chapter of my dad's life had died.
While still mourning the loss of his friend, Al was approached by filmmaker Charles Dumas to star in a short film about racism. The Garden is the profound story of a Holocaust survivor befriending an out-of-work black history professor.
He was invited to do it because Charles Dumas knew him and because they both wanted to create this kind of film. People use it for teaching. From time to time it's shown at a festival. It's a very, very special film.
I told you, Abel, this is all your fault.
My fault. My fault.
It is not your fault. Avromole. They killed us. You didn't.
Mom and you. Why I'm alive? Why?
So that you could plant our seed in the new world.
Soon after completing The Garden, the 70-year-old grew tired of the nightly grind at Grandpa's and decided to quit. Within months, the establishment closed its doors forever. He had walked away from the restaurant business, but Al Lewis was about to step into a much bigger arena.
It's great to be back.
By 1995, the outrageous Al Lewis was one of Gotham's most beloved and approachable characters.
Well, to New York, where he lives, he's a very large personality. He knows everybody. Everybody knows him. Cops, store clerks, and people enjoy him. They like to talk to him.
But Lewis's popularity reached far beyond his homeland. His notoriety as Grandpa gained him annual invitations to the International Latin American Film Festival in Havana, Cuba, where the actor had become a celebrated guest of honor.
He goes because he likes to go and he likes the people. But it's also in part because of his interest in these issues of justice and struggle. And so he brings some medical equipment, you know, packs up suitcases of things that they need because they're in hard times.
The busy septuagenarian continued to seek out new challenges. After accepting a cameo spot as his old character, Leo Schnauzer, in the feature-length remake of Car 54, Where Are You?, Al found another outlet for his creative energies. By the late 1990s, Al's passion for politics inspired him to host his own radio show on the New York listener-supported station WBAI.
I'm not a politician, I'm a performer. But I know the politics better than they do.
Well, I and a bunch of my friends were listening to his radio show on WBAI. At the time, I had no idea that Al was a lifelong political activist.
Looking for a gubernatorial candidate who could earn enough votes to put them on the ballot permanently, the Green Party was drawn to the charismatic former vampire.
The Green Party approached him and asked him if he would run for governor. I don't think you could have seen two more stunned people than Al and myself when we played our answering machine 2 or 3 times to see if we were hearing right.
On August 18, 1998, Al Lewis announced his candidacy for the governor's seat. Without a campaign fund, he canvassed the state, visiting cities small and large.
Before us, everybody here, I don't care what you think of him, owes it to Malcolm X.
He would go take trains, buses to Rome, New York, Syracuse, little bars, meet with 15 people, hear what they had to say. It was unbelievable. I mean, the guy's energy level was shot up 1,000%.
Now more in the public eye than ever, Lewis gave interview after interview. But when reporters dug into the actor's past, they were unable to verify many of Al's assertions.
Born April 30, 1910. I've been doing this as a performer since 1922.
I taught a specialty. I have a degree in education. I also have a degree in child psychology.
Dad has a habit, he's made a lifelong habit of telling too many stories that probably couldn't all be true at the same time. He has this kind of, well, creative habit of mythologizing certain aspects of his life, and he blows certain events up out of proportion.
At a time when many politicians found themselves on the defensive, the 75-year-old candidate was undaunted by the scrutiny. Although he lost the governorship to George Pataki, Lewis had put the Green Party permanently on the ballot.
He did the impossible. On virtually no money, he went up and down the state, doing interview after interview, and he got 52,000 votes.
In the fall of 1999, the aspiring politician once again astonished his public when he announced that he would run for U.S. Senate against Hillary Clinton and Rudolph Giuliani.
I heard on the news something about that he was going to run opposite Hillary Rodham Clinton for senator. I don't know what this is all about. Is this madness or is it for real?
What's going on around here?
Throwing his hat into the political ring wasn't difficult for a man who had worn many during his long and varied career. Grandpa Munster had made the boy from Brooklyn a cult celebrity and gave him recognition with baby boomers that few politicians ever achieve. By the year 2000, the Munsters had been on the air continuously since its debut, and a host of merchandise still flooded the markets.
He's so well known. Al on Broadway shows. And that doesn't matter. It's how many millions of people he reached doing Grandpa.
Well, that's as much as I can do.
After a lifetime in the public eye, Al Lewis had never tired of combining show business, politics, and a genuine concern for the people around him.
He does have a flair for being the cranky old guy, and he's really not. I mean, he's really a sweet guy.
He's rough, man. He is tough. He has that ability to make you feel on the defensive all the time. But he does it in a way where it's love all the way.
It's like he's a natural disaster. He comes through like a tornado and you're never the same.